What do you get when you have three billionaires, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Vivek Ramaswamy? Trump is a white supremacist. Elon Musk is a South African-born racist. And Vivek Ramaswamy wants to be white. What do you get when those three billionaires are running the government? You get more anti-black racial inequality. Very simply. Now, I warn you, these days were coming if the country reelected Trump. Many of you said I was fear-mongering, although I was simply explaining what was in Project 2025. Well, let me say this. I don't use the FAFO acronym because I'm a Christian preacher. Instead, I use the fool around, find out. And the country fooled around and reelected Trump. And now the country, especially blacks, is about to find out. It's the reason I created AMCA, because we must arise, mobilize, and keep advancing. Stay with me, and I'll explain. Hello, everybody. I am civil rights attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every week, we bring you at least one legal analysis of some trending story regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, and man, it should, in the day that we live in, so go ahead and like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you'll get notified every time we upload one of these powerful and informative videos. Now, please, before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com, grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice, so that you can learn the many ways that public schools mistreat our boys. And in this book, I will show you and teach you what you can do against those things so that your son can get the education that he deserves. So go on over and get your copy. You can thank me later. All right, so Trump announced that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will head the DOGE to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget. But that's not really what they're doing. What they're really doing is defunding what they call the deep state in order to drive out so-called woke federal employees. Of course, when they say woke, they're talking about federal employees who are not amenable with Trump's anti-DEI hatred, his anti-woke hatred, based on these fake claims of merit. So when Trump and MAGA attempted to completely wipe out equality, equity, diversity, inclusion in his first administration, these so-called deep state employees hindered it. Now the deep state is the number one enemy of MAGA. Now, I recently released a video on the deep state. I encourage you to go and watch that video. All right? It really lays it out. So now the MAGA sphere is what I call it, in collusion or in conspiracy with SCOTUS and the media, are all trying now to get rid of this so-called deep state. So what I want to do now is play a portion of a video done by a CNN reporter or anchor. His name is Fareed. And I want to show you from this video how Fareed is trying to normalize what Trump and Elon and Vivek are attempting to do. All right, we're only going to watch a portion of this because it's about 6 minutes long. But let's watch this.
Here's my take. Of Donald Trump's recent announcements, the one that intrigues, even excites me the most, is the establishment of DOGE, the misnamed Department of Government Efficiency. Misnamed because it is really a non-governmental advisory body that will work with the White House, not any kind of department inside government. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who will be in charge of Doge, are both brilliant, and the federal government has clearly become too expansive and its writ too cumbersome. There are over 180,000 pages of federal regulations. Surely it's worth taking a close look at them and retiring many. Observers have pointed out that the duo's efforts will be much harder to achieve than they imagine. Washington may be quite inefficient, but most of what it does is write checks with great efficiency. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, and other mandatory programs make up around 60% of the federal budget. Donald Trump has often said he would protect most of this spending. Next is the Department of Defense at over $800 billion, which has generally been considered untouchable for political reasons, though it is probably the department that most desperately needs to be streamlined. America has 4 different air forces: the Air Force itself, the Army's Air Force, the Navy's Air Force, and that of the Marines. After the Pentagon comes interest on the debt, also untouchable, which is almost as large as the Pentagon's budget. What is now left is about 15% of the federal budget, which includes certain veterans' benefits, agricultural subsidies, spending on roads and highways, etc. To achieve the $2 trillion spending cuts that Musk has often talked about, he would need to eliminate all of this spending and all of the Pentagon spending, and then he'd still have work to do. But I do support the impulse to reform, and not just because I think it will force greater scrutiny and efficiency to government, which needs it. The duo will also force the country, and especially the Republican Party, to confront a reality that it has danced around for decades.
All right, so Fareed's take on this is very, very different from my take. And it's not what he said that concerns me. It's what he didn't say, right? We can't take any issue with trying to make our government more efficient, to eliminate fraud and waste. That absolutely makes sense, to get rid of all the things that we're wasting money upon, right? But those are not the real reasons why Trump created this department, or this so-called department. It's not really a part of the government. It's outside the government, because I think it's so that these 2 billionaires, Elon and Vivek, can get around obvious conflicts of interest. I mean, they are obvious, especially with Elon, who has, many government contracts. And here he is now making recommendations about the budget, and he got all these government contracts. So anyway, it's not what Fareed says, it's what he doesn't say. He doesn't say what Elon, Vivek, and Trump all say, and that this is really about eliminating the deep state. Fareed, he talks about it as if there is a genuine desire on the part of Trump, Vivek, and Elon to bring some fiscal responsibility to the government. Look, Republicans, as Fareed did say, have talked about this issue and done nothing. And of course, Trump gave the richest people in the country a huge, almost $2 trillion tax cut, which ended up adding about $8.4 trillion to the federal deficit. But again, I don't want you to get lost in the sauce. I don't want you to allow Fareed to normalize what Trump's really doing. He is really defunding what he calls the deep state. It is all spelled out in Project 2025, and I did many videos on Project 2025. And I can just go ahead and tell you, I told you so. I told you so. And so we are absolutely right now in the midst of that, because the country fooled around and now is finding out, or it's about to find out. Now, I want to go to an article that Elon and Vivek wrote, an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and you'll see precisely what they're intending to do. And it has very little to do with what Fareed said. All right, let's go over to another screen. All right, this says Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, the DOJ plan to reform government. following the Supreme Court's guidance, will reverse a decades-long executive power grab. Our nation was founded on the basic idea that the people we elect run the government. That isn't how America functions today. Most legal ethics aren't laws enacted by Congress, but, quote, rules and regulations, close quote, promulgated by unelected bureaucrats. Tens of thousands of them each year. Most government enforcement decisions and discretionary expenditures aren't made by the democratically elected president or even his political appointees, but by millions of unelected, unappointed civil servants within government agencies who view themselves as immune from firing thanks to civil service protections. He says nothing similar to what Fareed said. Fareed, again, was trying to normalize this war on the so-called deep state. Now, once again, every American should be absolutely grateful if they were really trying to eliminate waste and fraud and all of that. That's not what this is about. They're playing games. This is about, as I said in that deep state video that I recently released, this is about trying to get rid of people that they consider woke, because those people hinder their efforts to promote and preserve white supremacy. All right. And by the way, I did a little research on Fareed, and I learned that when he was a Yale student, that he disagreed with divesting in South Africa. Wow. I found that to be interesting. And that was many years ago. But that stood out to me because I was involved when I was in college in efforts to get corporations here in America to divest from South Africa because we were trying to defund it. It was an effort led by Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., and I was a part of that march. We did a protest. We marched down to Bank of America's headquarters there in Greensboro, where I went to college at A&T. And while I'm doing that, Fareed is on the opposite side, basically saying that corporations, universities, and so forth should not divest their funds. In other words, should not defund apartheid. That just stands out. Maybe he's had a change of heart. I don't know. But clearly what we just read right here is that Vivek and Elon Musk are carrying out the orders of Trump. All right? Now, there's going to be a side benefit for them that I'll show you in just a moment. But they state in the very first paragraph that they're trying to get rid of the deep state. All right? Let's keep reading. President Trump has asked the two of us to lead a newly formed Department of Government Efficiency to cut the federal government down to size. The entrenched and ever-growing bureaucracy represents an existential threat to our republic, and politicians have abated it for too long. That's why we're doing things differently. We're entrepreneurs, not politicians. We will serve as outside volunteers, not federal officials or employees. Unlike government commissions or advisory committees, we won't just write reports or cut ribbons. We'll cut costs. He said nothing yet about balancing the budget. It's all about getting rid of these woke bureaucrats. Okay? Let's go down. He says, we will focus particularly on driving change through executive action based on existing legislation rather than by passing new laws. Our North Star for reform will be the U.S. Constitution, with the focus on two critical Supreme Court rulings issued during Biden's tenure. In West Virginia v. Environmental Protection Agency 2022, the justices held that agencies can't impose regulations dealing with major economic or policy questions unless Congress specifically authorizes them to do so. And Loper Bright v. Raimondo 2024, this was a big one, as well as the other one. The court overturned the Chevron doctrine. Go back and look up that video. I did a video on the importance of this case, the Chevron doctrine, getting rid of the Chevron doctrine. And I said then that this would empower Trump to just completely take over the federal government. All right, go back and watch that video. and held that federal courts should no longer defer to federal agencies' interpretations of the law or their rulemaking authority. Together, these cases suggest that a plethora of current federal regulations exceed the authority Congress has granted under the law. DOJ will work with legal experts embedded in government agencies aided by advanced technology to apply these rulings to federal regulations enacted by such agencies. DOJ will present this list of regulations to President Trump, who can, by executive action, immediately pause the enforcement of those regulations and initiate the process for review and rescission. This would liberate individuals and businesses from illicit regulations never passed by Congress and stimulate the U.S. economy. Now, here is the side benefit, or maybe the main benefit for people like Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Jeff Bezos, and others. And that is, they're going to get rid of a lot of regulations that hinder them from just making even more money. Instead of 200 billion, 250 billion, another 50 billion, another 100 billion, because these regulations are gone. And Trump, not only will he get his desire to get rid of this so-called deep state, he too will make money. You see how sinister this is? See how sinister this is? Oh, this is very, very sinister. All right, let's keep reading. The president owes lawmaking deference to Congress, not to bureaucrats deep within federal agencies. And notice, nothing has been said yet that is similar to what Fareed said. What Fareed said is trying, once again, to normalize what these guys are doing or will do. Fareed is trying to make the American people think that this is good for America, this is good for the budget. That's not what this is about. They're not trying to balance the budget. They're doing two things here. They're trying to get rid of the deep state because the deep state hinders Trump's desire to preserve and protect white supremacy. And then they all get the secondary benefit of getting rid of regulations, which means they all can make more money. Follow me? Oh, they got this thing down pat. They celebrated. It is the reason why Elon Musk spent so much money trying to get Trump elected. Because it's sort of a situation of scratch my back, I scratch your back. Right? Quid pro quo. Okay? You see, that's what this is about. Now, the issue is, who will suffer most from this? Who will suffer most from this? It will be African American people, primarily, and poor people generally. While they get rid of regulations, and by the way, those regulations, I know this, having handled many personal injury cases over the years. Those regulations are in place to provide safety. Safety. You get rid of the regulations, the safety regulations, like with OSHA, the Environmental Protection Agency. You get rid of those regulations, people will die so that Elon, Vivek, and Trump, and the rest of them can make even more money. Because when we, the attorneys, try to litigate these cases, we don't have the regulations in place because Elon and Vivek and Trump got rid of a bunch of them to hold those corporations accountable. You see? That's where we're headed. And after those regulations are fully rescinded, a future president can't simply flip the switch and revive them, but would instead have to ask Congress to do so. So they got this thing all planned out. If we can get reelected one more time, just like Trump said, we're going to go in there this time. We're loyalists. We're going to get rid of this deep state. And then we can protect white supremacy and make a whole lot of money while we're doing it. It's just a win-win situation for them. All right? Let's read one more section here. DOGE intends to work with embedded appointees. Embedded appointees. It is precisely what Project 2025 said would happen. That once they get back in office, they will appoint political operatives, MAGA loyalists, who would be right under the directors of these agencies, and they will be there to carry out Trump's wishes. So I'll give them this credit. They have not hidden this. They've been pretty upfront about it. I mean, the Project 2025 manual stayed online for months. I did my first video on Project 2025 about 10 or 11 months ago. And then they wrote this op-ed for anyone who will just simply what? Read, who have the requisite skill set to understand what they're reading, right? You know, you need to know the law. You need to know some things about regulations. You need to know some things like that to really be able to understand it. Well, all you got to do is look to channels like this to get that type of information and empowerment. So DOGE intends to work with embedded appointees, MAGA loyalists, in agencies to identify the minimum number of employees required at an agency for it to perform its constitutionality, permissible, and statutorily mandated functions. Now, here's a question. Which employees are going to be fired or forced to retire or resign? It'll be the ones that they deem to be woke, right? Woke. And which type of person are they going to hire? MAGA loyalist. Well, wait a minute. I thought this was all about merit. So now you can get a federal job if you voted for Trump, regardless of your qualifications? Yes, we see that with Trump's cabinet picks. It doesn't matter what your qualification is, which is why I did another video several months ago saying that merit, the whole merit doctrine, is a fraud. It's a sham. This country's never been about hiring the best. It's always been about basically race. Race. And you just simply, again, just look at Trump cabinet picks. So far, only one person out of about 20 are black. And that, you know what? That black person would not be overheard if that black person was not loyal to Trump and loyal to the MAGA agenda. So you got to be a certain kind of black. Has nothing to do with your qualifications or expertise or any of that. So this is not really merit. It never has been about merit. You follow me? So, yeah, right here, DOGE intends to work. If I'm mispronouncing it, I don't care. However you want to see it, DOGE, Dodge, I could care less. DOGE intends to work with embedded appointees in agencies to identify the minimum number of employees required at an agency for it to perform its constitutionality, permissible, and statutorily mandated functions. So if you're in one of these federal positions, you may want to be careful who you talk to, because if you talk to one of these MAGA political appointees and you say something disparaging about Trump, or you say something good about diversity or so forth, you're going to be put on a list. You're going to be out of there. Doesn't matter how long you've been there. Doesn't matter how good you are at your job. Doesn't matter what your education level is. No. This is about getting rid of people like you because you're what? Woke. You see how fundamentally unfair all this is? And it's the reason why I spent the last 10 or 11 months, about 10 months, warning you, trying to educate and school you and inform you and empower and equip you not to go back down this road and give Trump a second chance. That's why. Well, FAFO, where the F stands for fool around, find out. That's where we are, folks. I tried to avoid it. I tried to get us to avoid it by voting for Kamala Harris. A lot of folks didn't listen. So now we got to deal with the consequences. Now we're going to find out. Unless we arise, mobilize, keep advancing. That is AMCA. That is a movement that I am trying my best to create and to get going. Please go to LLJP.org/AMKA and join the movement to resist all this that we see Trump trying to implement that will harm the most vulnerable, especially African Americans, because there is a racial component to all of this. Okay? All right. I am attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching this video. And remember, and never forget, AMCA, AMCA, AMCA. Arise, mobilize, keep advancing.